I'm really grateful to Professor Majid Chaudhry first for giving this opportunity at such a short notice. Sana I met after ages at a friend's son's wedding. And I saw this pretty little thing full of happiness, oozing confidence, and meeting everybody so cheerfully at this wedding function that I was really touched. So I requested her that you have to come and address us. And to cap this, she's an old student of LMDC. She was here in 2002 in first year when she met this road traffic accident and sustained a C4-5 fracture dislocation, which was fixed, and a complete spinal cord injury. The most amazing thing is she's now done her LLB. She's now got a diploma. She's now got a diploma in human rights. I don't know where she's going to put it to use in Pakistan. I don't know where she's going to put it to use in Pakistan because we don't believe in human rights there. And she's not stopped here. She's now doing her LLM. So this shows the grit of this young lady. And I thought, with the permission of her parents and Sana, that she should be our ambassador of our spine center, the first one of its kind in the country. So I now request Sana to share with us her story, share with us the ups and downs that she's seen over these 15 years. And inshallah, at the end, you're free to ask her any questions. So over to Sana. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Please bear with me. मेरा बैंक टाइम है, मैं आई हूँ ना मेरे कॉलेज. I hope मैं ज़्यादा emotional ना हो जाऊँ. Out of suffering have emerged the strongest souls, the most massive characters I see in this town. Assalamualaikum, I'm Sana Bashir, and I've been asked here to tell you about my life. How events in your life, which you hear about thinking, oh, they're never gonna happen to me, but never realizing that they just might. I was in my first year over here when on a way to Islamabad, somewhere near Pindi Bhatia, the tire of a car burst. The driver, the genius that he was, tried to stop it by applying brakes. The result, the car rolled over a couple of times before it finally stopped. It was too late then. I lost my elder sister in that accident that day, but they didn't tell me about that. I got to know much later. My mother, my auntie, my 2-year-old niece, they all suffered injuries, but thank God it was nothing that couldn't be fixed. My friend who was sitting next to me, she survived without a scratch on her body, whereas the maid sitting on my other side, she died. So I was literally between life and death. Immediately after the accident, I remember my friend was telling me to get out of the car. She was pushing me. I wanted to tell her, "Get don't," but no sound was coming out of my mouth. I felt groggy and disoriented. Anyway, eventually, I think some people had stopped over. I don't know if they were the paramedics or just ordinary people, I don't remember. They pulled, shoved, yanked me out of the car to put me down on the road because we were waiting for the ambulance to come. I don't know if they waited for the ambulance to come and for the properly trained people have made any difference to my injury? I don't know, and I'll never find that out now. Anyway, we went to a local hospital in Pindi Bhatia. I remember the doctor on duty was literally shouting that I was too serious to be treated over there. So I was moved to Lahore General Hospital. Over there, I remember I saw my sister and I was so relieved to see a familiar face. And I knew now my father would take over. Anyway, to cut a very long and tragic story short, I had a broken right femur. I had multiple rib fractures, lots of superficial skin abrasions. But these were all overshadowed by the spinal injury at the C4 and C5 level. Being in a hospital is not fun, obviously. But I am extremely lucky and very proud to say that the 1 week that I was in General, my friends and my family, they never left my side. They were with me 24/7. Because of my injury, I was lying flat on my body. My head was in a traction and it was weighed down by bricks. The only thing that I could move were my eyes and my lips. But I didn't really realize what had happened to me. Nobody let me think because they kept me so engaged. So I didn't realize the enormity of my injury then. My friends kept me so occupied in their kahaniyan, their gupshup. They didn't let me think, and I'm grateful to them for that. And at General Hospital, I had a 10 or 12 month operation where they fixed my vertebrae, they were rejoined. During the operation, my recurrent laryngeal nerve was cut. Because of that, I had difficulty speaking and stridor, that's what it's called. After that, I developed more post-op complications. I got respiratory distress, which eventually, some other stuff as well. I don't even remember that. And my parents have also developed amnesia. They blocked it all out. Anyway, I was there for 1 week in General Hospital. After that, I was being transferred to our own private hospital when I went into respiratory and then cardiorespiratory arrest. I was revived, but I needed a ventilator immediately. So PIC became my new home for 2 months. Oh, I got a tracheostomy and they did a bronchoscopy to remove obstructions. Life at PIC was all about suctions, ventilator, alarm going off every few minutes. I came to near death so many times that I think we all lost count. It became a matter of routine. When my friends were attending their first year welcome party, I was fighting for my life. Every second was a struggle. Life was. I didn't think beyond that moment because I never thought that I'm going to get out of here alive. I thought that, oh my God, this is it. I'm never going to be able to breathe on my own. I'm never going to be able to talk because during one of the many procedures that I had, my vocal cord got cut. The list of the abilities that I was losing kept on getting longer and longer, and it was bad. I mean, I was confused. I didn't know. Anyway, my family did what they could for me. Since I couldn't talk, which I love to do, they had this chart with alphabets on it, and I had to blink yes and no and spell out the words. I mean, but the people who were really happy that I didn't have a voice were the nurses. I mean, if I could talk, I would have given them peace of my mind. The nursing staff in our country, I mean, they think they're doing us favors. They just conveniently forget involved patient. I used to tell the doctor used to come on the round about any new X-ray or test result which the nurses always conveniently forgot to inform them. So as a result of that, Dr. Jawad, he was the CEO of that. He was very kind. He had all the monitors facing towards me because he thought I was the best judge of monitoring my own stats. Apart from that, I remember once duty doctor he came, he had a haircut, and I was trying to tell him, did you get a haircut? And he was so happy. He said, oh look, you guys didn't notice, but she did. Anyway, you can't feel depressed all the time. I did what I could at PIC, but still life was a struggle. It was bad. I felt that I'm never gonna make it out of here alive. So when I was eventually off the vent and I was considered stable enough to be transferred to our own hospital, it was a relief because at least it was a familiar place. Even though my life was from one hospital to another, it was tough, but I don't know. Even till then, I don't think it had hit me what had happened to me. I was just taking one day at a time because I didn't think I was going to make it, I think I blocked it all out. Anyway, after 5 months of being in one hospital or another, the news that I was going to UK for rehabilitation was very welcoming. The moment I landed in UK, I was finally treated as a human being. All the questions were directed towards me. They used to keep my parents out of the room. It makes sense. The patient knows what's happening to their body. I know best. My parents can't answer for me. So that was a new thing that I learned in England. Everything was directed at me. And over there, they told me that one of my vocal cords could be fixed by injecting collagen in it. I was told I'd never be able to talk loudly and never be able to sing. So this was a dream, which I didn't even have, that was taken away from me. I thought life is very unfair. My stint at rehab in UK was a learning experience for all of us, I think. My parents and the family, they were told how to take care of me. I was made to accept that this is it. This wheelchair is my life now. Whatever plans that I had for my life were not going to happen anymore. I felt I had been robbed of every dream that I had. I thought, this is unfair, or life had taken away everything what I had imagined it to be, and I was quite depressed then, and I was in a bad place. In moments like these, everybody thinks that they know best. I was advised to say my prayers, read the Quran, eat food, whatever. Everybody means well, but nobody can make you do anything until you yourself are ready. And it takes a lot of time to come to terms with a situation which is not likely to change. At least it did for me. For 3 years, I was completely bedridden. I rarely went out of the house because I was so self-conscious. Because when I used to sit on the chair, they used to put a belt around me because I couldn't hold my body. My hands were in splints. There was not a single thing that I could do on my own except for blink. I was dependent on other people for everything. I hated any help which my parents got for me. I was a terrible patient, in short. But it's sad when you hit rock bottom, the only place to go is up. And I think what hit me most was my other sister Amna. She told me, Sana, you've been given the gift of life. Embrace it. You are going to to live no matter what. You don't have a choice in that. But what you do have a choice is in, how you choose to live your life. You can either mope and cry and be miserable, or you say, okay, to hell with it. You accept what has happened and you move on. And I think that's what I did. I was so done feeling sorry for myself. And I was ready. So my mother, she took me to England for another stint at physio. I was there for 6 months this time. I think I was more receptive to it, so it worked a lot as well. My physio was a tough, she was like a very hard taskmaster. But she transformed me into a person, a bedridden lump, to a person who was now strong enough and a person who was now mobile enough to operate my own wheelchair. I made full advantage of my newfound independence. We were traveling all over London. We did simple things like going to restaurants, cinemas, traveling in buses, trains, simple things, really ordinary things which you take for granted when they are happening to you. My father was not too happy with my newfound independence. I remember he used to call us all the time, "Beta, it's midnight now, it's too much, you guys aren't home." So, but it was getting, I think life was on its way. There was no miracle for people back home to show, because for them, recovery for me means that I'll start walking again, but that is not so. The word achievement, it has a different meaning for everybody. It can range from climbing the Everest to just sitting in a chair for 1 extra hour without fainting. The criteria for quality of life keeps on changing as you go. It can range from mere survival to a life of betterment for yourself, for others. So you can't really categorize what success is. When I got back, one thing I learned from UK was this wheelchair was not something to despise. It was a part of me and I'm grateful to it. It has given me independence. Not being in a wheelchair and not doing anything was not an excuse anymore. Over there I saw people in worse of situations than me living independent lives. So that was quite an eye-opener. When I got back, I started my studies, and I had to start all over again because I had to sit for 2 A-level exams just to get eligible for LLB. But I did that, and then once I was done with my LLB, I started my LLM. I'm still doing that. I'm just in the last part of that. Inshallah, I'll be done soon. So studying for me had its challenges. Since I can't write, making notes becomes impossible, but thank God for copy paste ease. And I have to dictate my answers to a writer, which is more than challenging, it's very annoying because I have to spell out each and every word. I have to tell them, leave a line, put a full stop, comma, blah blah blah. But I don't let these obstacles hold me back, because I don't want to make any excuses for myself. So anyway, be grateful. You guys can write, at least you know what to write about. So I did. So anyway, where was that? So yeah, so that was UK was a learning experience for me. I think the real challenge for me has always been overcoming my own inhibitions, the self-doubt. We tend to be our own worst enemy. We have this preconceived notion of what our life should be. I myself, I had it all planned out. I knew I was going to get into a medical college, graduate, go abroad, specialize, come back. I had it all mapped out, but life has other plans that is when you really start living. And as cliched as it may sound, life is what we make of it. And I mean, for me, being a quadriplegic is not all bad. I mean, it has its perks. Like I get to travel first class, which is I didn't have to, but and you know, when my first year attendance came, it was really bad. It was 60%. तो otherwise तो अम्मी अपने जूते मारने थे कंट्रोल जाती but because I was in the hospital, so they were so proud, they showed it to everybody. And anyway, and when I go abroad, when we go to museums and amusement parks, I get to jump the queue. जब ये सब बैठे होते हैं 4-4 घंटों की लाइनों में, so that is another plus point. But sadly, Pakistan में it is not so. I went to vote in the last elections, and a lady over there created such a hue and cry. I'm not going to let the wheelchair go first, and it was sad to see such a lady from an affluent background not getting it. Because I mean, what can you say to such पढ़े लिखे जाहिल लोग who don't realize that people, elderly people, disabled people, people with children are given first priority everywhere around the world. Magar bas that's Pakistan for you. And I think the thing that matters is that life goes on, and you need to accept that. And you walk, you run, walk, crawl, it doesn't matter how. What matters is that you keep on going and you keep on moving forward. What matters is that you don't let any negativity, any self-doubt, anything hold you captive. I don't want to make any kind of excuses for myself. I feel I'm not defined by my disability, but it has made me into the person that I am today, and I'm very proud of it. My injury has taught me a lot. It has made me into a better person. I think I feel as if that I'm more understanding towards other people's feelings now. It has taught me what matters in life, what things to hold on to and what to let go of. I mean, life is short. Be grateful, be contented. It doesn't matter if you have to change your plans. What matters is that you keep on moving and you improvise. In England, I learned that about occupational therapy is very important. It is about improvisation. It is about adaptation. Over there, I was taught to understand my body. My body doesn't function like an able-bodied person. I don't feel anything from the neck downwards. I don't feel any pain, so I can't tell if I'm hurt or if there's anything wrong. My body's way of telling me that is I start sweating from one side. And I have to understand signals that it sends me. Just take your time. And I've had a lot of practice, so I've learned how to cope with it. But it's okay. I mean, things like autonomic dysreflexia, I didn't even know the meaning of it, but it's become such an intrinsic part of my existence that I have to be on the constant lookout for it. I have to keep myself hydrated, otherwise my catheter acts up. I have to keep on eating something, otherwise I faint. So life is a struggle, and it's not easy, but I try, and I try to do it with a smile on my face. I mean, nobody has it easy, Everybody is going through some issue or the other. So what we all need to remember is that it's okay if things don't work out how, as you imagine they would turn out. You just improvise, you get on with it. You don't focus on the things which you don't have, which are not going to happen. You just be grateful and accept what you can do. So I think that's what I'm trying to do, and it's an ongoing process. that as well. I just allow myself a few minutes of self-pity. I write all my deepest, darkest thoughts in a journal, and once I'm done, I try not to dwell on it. It's difficult, but I try. And I try, and you know, my family has been amazing in that respect. They are like a wall of support. They don't let me doubt my abilities for a second. So, and you know, I set the tone of our house. So if I'm down, everybody else is down. So then I feel guilty. So you know, I try to be happy for their sake as well as for mine. Coming here has been so emotional for me. This is the first time I'm back in LFTC. You know, I was going through the corridors and I remembered the last time I was here. So it was a very happy time for me. I made some amazing friends over here who I'm still in touch with. And I remember when this accident happened, all the faculty was so supportive. They all came to see me. And I remember one of the demos, he came to see me and he was going to say something about my sister and then told me about it. So my friend took him away. But yeah, people have been really nice to me and kind to me. So you know, I've learned, I appreciate it all, and I feel lucky and blessed for every two people who have sort of hurt me, maybe not even without intentionally doing it. I've had 10 who have been extra nice to me, so I have no reasons to complain in life. So, you know, and I'm really thankful to Dr. Amir Aziz for calling me here today. I thought I would start crying, but thank God I didn't. I was really scared of that. I don't know, I feel as if I've not done much in life, but still I have. And I hope I didn't bore you all over here today. So, and thank you so much. And please, I just sat for 3 LLM exams. Pray that I pass.